to the new parak, the third parak, Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph. So this Mishnah lists the 18 treifas. There are 18 treifas, halacha Moshe Sinai. There are 18 different ailments that cause an animal to be a treifa. Now, just the one thing about a treifa is that the treifas will cause the animal to die. Now, there's a machlekes in the Gemara and in the Tanoim whether a treifa can live a year. But even if you believe that a treifa can live a year, he will ultimately die from these ailments. These all ailments are life-threatening. Says the Mishnah, Elu treifas b'behema, these are the following 18 treifas. I'll run through them very quickly. Nukuvas aveshet, if the esophagus is punctured. See, the trachea is only a problem if it's cut. The esophagus, the trachea is only a problem if it's cut 51%, but the esophagus, which is for food, is a problem even if there's a puncture. So punctured esophagus, psukas akageres, the trachea is severed 51%. Nikiv krum shel moyach, if the membrane of the brain was punctured. Nikiv halevel beis chalal, if the heart was punctured. Nishbar hashedra v'nifsach hachut shelo, if the spine was broken and it was severed, the spinal cord. Nital hakaved v'nilei nisham v'nuklum, if the entire liver is removed. Hareya shenikva, the seventh is the lung is punctured. Now, the Tanakama believes puncture in the lung, apparently the lungs have the membranes on the outside. Even if the membrane is punctured, that's enough to be a treifa. Or if there's a hole in the lungs. Rav Shimon says, no, it's not enough to puncture the membrane outside of the lung. You have to actually puncture entirely through the lung. Entirely through. Nikva hakeva, if the keva, which is one of the stomachs of the cow, becomes punctured. Nikva hamara, if the gallbladder becomes punctured. Notice there's a lot of punctures, by the way. It's actually going to be relevant to the end of the daf. I think there's like 7 punctures in the Mishnah. Nikva hadakin, if the intestines are punctured. Hakeres hapnimius nikva, if the keres hapnimius, that's one of the stomachs, that's punctured. Or shenikru roiv achitzayna. Apparently there's the inside, they're called keres hapnimius. They call it the paunch. It's the first stomach. There's the inside of it and the outside. I don't know. So the inside of it, so the Tanakama says that if it's the inside is punctured or the outside is torn entirely, roiv. Rav Yehuda says no, hagdayla tefach. In case of a large animal, if the outside of the keres is torn a tefach, haktana beroiva. And a small animal, it has to be the majority. Okay. Hamesis ubeis hakaisis, those are again parts. Those are different stomachs of the cow. Shenikvu labachutz, if they were punctured to the outside, meaning a complete puncture. Nafla min agag, or if let's say the animal just fell from the roof, so we don't know what's going on inside. If an animal falls from the roof, you have to assume it has,
straightforward.
Yeah, falls from the roof, then it has some sort of injury. You have to assume that it has internal injuries to the point where it's going to die. Nishtabu rib salaseha, or most of the ribs were broken. If it broke most of its ribs. Now, one of the forms of invalidation of an animal, halacha mashmisin, is called drusa. Drusa means that if it was attacked by a wolf or a lion, I'll just tell you, Chazal understood that there's a poison that these animals inflict in the animal. So if it's gashed by a lion, the lion's gash will cause a poison. Now, by the way, there are some Mefarshim that modern day Mefarshim, I think the Maritz Chiz talks about this, that they believe that the poison is not an actual poison. It's that there's bacteria under the nail of the lion, or papashtus, maybe Chazal felt that there was some sort of poison. Okay, but that's called drusa. So drusa sazev, even if it's clawed by a wolf is not a very big animal, but the wolf also has this poison that will cause it to die. Rav Yehuda says no. Drusa sazev bedaka, clawing a wolf, the poison of a wolf's nails is only strong enough to kill a small animal, not a cow. Drusa's ari begasa. In order to kill a big animal, you need a lion to claw it. Drusa's hanates. Ba'oif hadak, there's a bird type of nates, type of bird. If it claws at a small bird, that will cause the small bird to be a treifa. Udrusas hageis, ba'oif hageis. And a gas is a bigger type of bird. I don't know what type of bird it is, but if that's what you need in order to take down a large bird. Zehaklal, this is the rule. Now, by the way, this line is very important. Zehaklal, this is the rule. Kol she'en kamoya chaya treifa. Any time it has a life-threatening injury, it's a treifa. Now, this last line is very important because I'll tell you why. The Gemara is going to point out that while there are 18 treifas that the Mishnah listed, there's apparently much more. There's apparently, I think, an additional 13. And why is it not listed? So the Gemara says, our Mishnah is not a problem because it ends off with Zehaklal. Zehaklal is basically the Mishnah's way of saying, listen, I listed 18, there might be more. This is the rule. Anything that's life-threatening, no. But the problem the Gemara is going to point out is that there's a brisa that doesn't have this line of Zehaklal. It just lists the 18. What about the other ones? The Gemara will address. Okay. Amr of Shimon ben Lakish Zak the Gemara. Reish Lakish has a question. Remez l'treifa min haTorah minayin. Where is the hint to treifa in the Torah? Now pause. What type of shayla is that? It's not a hint. There's a pasuk. Reish Lakish gets up and he says, "Where is it alluded to treifas in the Torah?" Alluded is a pasuk. Minayin ubasar b'seida treifa lo yiseichelu is an issa deraisa v'treifa. What do you mean? Where's the allusion? Where's the hint to treifa? What are you talking about? Ella remez l'treifa she'ena chaya min haTorah. I told you before. According to many opinions, a treifa cannot live a year. It's machlokes. A treifa, according to some opinions, is not just life-threatening. It has to be life-threatening that it won't be able to survive 12 months. Other opinions disagree. They say it's life-threatening, but it could survive a couple years. Says Rish Lakish, I hold that it has to die within a year. Where is the hint to that? That a treifa is an animal that will die within the year. So he says, Diktani Seifa. So the Gemara says it's because the end of the Mishnah, Zeha Klal, Kol She'en Kamoya Chaya Treifa. Notice how the Mishnah ended off when defining a treifa as any animal that's not chaya. Chaya doesn't just mean that it's life-threatening. It means chaya won't live, meaning it's not even going to live the year. Okay. Mechlal de treifa ene chaya. Minolan. So what's the meaning? So Rish Lakish is saying the Mishnah says it at the end. Where's the source in the Torah? Meaning that's why Rish Lakish is asking for an allusion, because the Mishnah ends off by implying that the animal's not going to live a year because it says it's not chaya. So Rish Lakish is saying, where is the source of the Torah for this? Tichsiv v'zois hachaya asher teichelu. Again, I mentioned this. I think we had this a couple dafim ago. Chaya is usually the Gemara's allusion to an animal, but the fact that it uses the term chaya and not behema, chaya means it has to live. So it's like the Gemara, chaya achol she'ena chaya loy teichal. Dafka, if it's going to live, then you eat it. If it's not going to live the year, Michal Shefel Echai. True, but for these halachas, there's no distinction. You're right, if it was karbanos, I'd agree with you, but you're talking about animals. There's no difference in these halachas between chaya and behema. So why does it have to say the word chaya? The answer is because that's the point. It has to be able to live the year. Now this is assuming that a treifa has to be able, meaning Rish Lakish holds that a treifa is going to die within 12 months. So he says, where's the source for this? The problem is that if you hold that a treifa can live a couple years, so what do you do with the word chaya? Right? So Lamanda Amar Treifa Chaya Minola. And if you hold that a treifa is not gonna live, it lives past the year, Minole, what's the source for that? Meaning what's the source? I'm sorry, where Rashi explains it. Every opinion wants to find a source for themselves. So we just found a source. If you believe a chaya is going to die within a year, what's the source? Because it says chaya. Now, if you believe a chaya can live a year, what's your source? Everyone has to have a source to their opinion. So nafkale mizois hachaya asher teichelu, zois hachaya ochol chaya cheres loy teichel mechal treva chaya. Because it says zois hachaya. Why does it say zois? Zois means the Torah is saying this is an example of an animal, a chaya that you're not going to eat, but there's another example. This is an example of a chaya that you could eat, but there's another example of a chaya that you can't eat. What's an example of a chaya I can't eat? Chaya means it's going to live. What's an example of an animal that's going to live a year that I can't eat? A treifa. I mean, the fact that the pasuk says zois hachaya asher teichelu, this is the chaya you should eat, implies there's another chaya. Again, chaya is not just an animal. Chaya means an animal that's going to live. There's another animal that's going to live the year. Don't eat, which is that one a treifa. Meaning the pasuk is saying a treifa is an animal that's going to live a year, but still don't eat it. So it's from the word zois. Says the Gemara v'idach, and if you believe that the animal's going to die within a year, what do you do with the word zois? Hi zois my avidle. What do you do with the word zois hachaya? It's extra. So the answer is mebayla kedetani de Rabbi Shmuel. It's used for the teaching of Rabbi Shmuel. The Tan Rabbi Shmuel. Zois hachaya asher teichelu. Zois hachaya teaches you the following: Tafes hakadosh baruch hu mikol min v'min beher la Moshe. It's a famous medrash. The Moshe Rabbeinu had a hard time, whatever this means, on his madrega, grasping which animals are a treifa, which animals are not, which animals are kosher, which animals are not. So Hashem grabbed each one and put each animal before Moshe and says, Zois teichelu, Zois loy teichelu. It was HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed each animal to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, this species eat, this species don't eat. Zois, that was the allusion. Ve'idach nami, but wait a minute. So we said, what does the word Zois teach you? So the first opinion says, Zois teaches me that it's going to live a year. The other opinion says, no, it's the medrash of Moshe Rabbeinu being showed each animal. Now, if you believe that the word Zeis is being taught that it could survive a year, you don't believe that the story happened with Moshe Rabbeinu? Of course it happened. So the question is, the other opinion should also need this Zeis to tell you the medrash with Moshe Rabbeinu being shown each animal. In other words, if that's what happened, then you can't have a machlekes about it. So they both agree it happened. So they both agree Zeis is for that. So now we're back to the original question. If you believe that the animal is going to live a year, and it's still called a treifa, even though it's going to survive a year, where is the source? Don't tell me it's Zeis, because Zeis is used with the medrash of Moshe. Ein hachanami, you're right. Ela treifa chayim in ole. How do I know that a treifa is going to live a year? Nafkale meidach Tana B'Reb Yishmael. It's used for the other source of Tana B'Reb Yishmael. The Tana B'Reb Yishmael, bein hachaya necheles, ubein hachaya asher lo teachel. It's describing treifas as a chaya asher lo teachel, meaning it's chaya, it's going to live, but still don't eat it. This is an allusion to the 18 treifas. They're chaya, they're going to live, but still don't eat them. That's an allusion to the 18 treifas that were told to Moshe Rabbeinu. Good. Now, here's the point. Okay. Here's what we're going to do until the end of the daf. It's very easy. Our Mishnah said there are 18 treifas. 2 hours sleep last night. Do not feel well. Not because of the game. I had a song stuck in my head. My brain was running. I couldn't get it off. I feel terrible. I took a melatonin at 3:15, which is 3:15. I took a pill to try to help me sleep, knowing full well I'll feel off. I feel terrible. Anyway, Kitzer, here's the shaila. The Mishnah says 18 treifas. The problem is there are more. That's the issue. Says the Gemara, V'suleka, there's only 18. V'hika, there's 18. Good. The problem is we have a tradition that in addition to their 18, there's basgar. Basgar is base, samach, gimel, resh. It's alluding to 4 other ailments. And shev shmaitza. And another 7 teachings. So it's another way of saying another 11. Basgar, which is base, samach, gimel, resh. It's an acronym for 4 different types of ailments. And shev shmaitza. By the way, shev shmaitza, which is a sefer from the Ktsois, shev shmaitza is the 7 traditions of 7 treifas. So in other words, 7 plus 4 are 11. In other words, it's not 18. There's an additional 11.
Why is it called?
I don't know. Those are the 7 teachings when it comes to treifas. So the point is, so it's an additional 11. Don't tell me it's 18. I thought there's really 29. That's the question. Now says the Gemara, go to the next page. Now before we get to what those 11 are, our Mishnah is not a problem. Why? Because when we read the Mishnah, I told you, the Mishnah ends off, Zeh HaKlal. Zeh HaKlal is basically the Mishnah's way of saying, I'm not listing all of them. I'm telling you the 18 that were given over to Moshe Rabbeinu, and regarding the additional ones, Zeh HaKlal. No, it's not a problem. The Gemara says, Bishlam ilatana didan, the tana udeshayir aisya b'zeh HaKlal. That all the ones that are not listed mefurish in the Mishnah are included in that extra line of Zeh HaKlal. Fine. The problem is the Brisa. The Brisa of Tana B'Reb Yishmael. Tana B'Reb Yishmael, in Rabbi Yishmael's base medrash, they had a Brisa, and the Brisa said 18. Zehu, stop. 18, hard stop. But what about the extra 11? Okay, now here's the thing. Let's go through each 11, and we'll see why they don't hold of it. Okay? Or they say they're 18. The problem is, it's really 29. We had the 18 of our Mishnah. We're now going to start listing the additional 11. I told you Basgar is 4. Let's go with the bays of Basgar. Number 1, Behema. Bays is Behema. Shenechtechu ragleha min arkuva l'mayla. Treifa. By the way, the OU put out last night, I was watching it at 2:45, they put out videos from that butcher. He's butchering an animal, showing each treifa. It's really nauseous. It's a chassidish. Yeah, it's a dead animal. He has a skinned animal, and he says, Das is the animal, what the Gemara says, and he's showing each nekuva, all these items. So number 1 of the extra 11 is if behema, that it's cut, if it's cut above the knee. Basically, if you sever the knee joint above the knee, the animal's a treifa. So why is that not listed by Tana Rabbi Yishmael? So it says the Gemara, Sava like Rav Shimon Elazar. Tana Rabbi Yishmael disagrees. They hold like Rav Shimon Elazar. What does Shimon Elazar say? Da'amar yechayli l'chavetz v'lichyos. Rav Shimon Elazar said about an animal that you cut above the knee that you can actually cauterize it. Cauterize? Cauterize is where you stop the bleeding. If you cauterize it, it'll survive. Cauterize. If you cauterize it, it'll survive. In other words, Rav Shimon Elazar believes that it's not a treifa. A treifa means that it's going to die. Not fixable. This is fixable. Just put a bandage, meaning stop the bleeding, it'll survive. That's why Rabbi Shmuel does not list this as the extra 18. So says the Gemara, wait a minute. Wait a minute, you're telling me it could survive a year? I thought Rabbi Shmuel holds all treifas could survive years. So the Gemara said, no. It could survive entirely. Says the Gemara, Ella Savala Rishim and Elazar Damar Ksherehi. No, it follows Rishim and Elazar. Rishim and Elazar's statement is not just that it could survive, because it could survive is a little bit tricky, because treifas also could survive a couple years. No, Kshera, meaning an animal cut above the knee is not a treifa, according to Rabbi Shmuel. So that's the first. Let's keep going. Again, the question is, what? It could survive. He has a machlokes mitzias. He believes the animal could survive. It's not a treifa. He believes that if you just take a strong bandage, stop the bleeding, it'll be fine. Long term, it'll be fine. So again, Rabbi Shmuel says they're 18, assuming the 18 of our Mishnah. The question is, what about the additional 11? So Beis we already covered, he doesn't hold of. Let's go to Samach. Ha'ika chisarum b'shedra. What about missing part of the spinal column? Meaning it's missing what's called a ring. One of the rings from the spinal column, let's say it's missing. The halacha is, says the Gemara, D'Tanan, Kamech Yisarim B'Shedra, how much is missing of the spinal cord and it's no longer give tumas oil of a dead body, you need the entire spinal cord. If it's missing part of the spinal cord, it no longer gives off transmission of tumah via airspace. According to Beishamai, in order for it to be deficient, it has to be missing 2 columns of the spine of the vertebrae. Beis Hillel says 1. You know what that machlokes is? That machlokes is regarding tumas meis, but it's also regarding a treifa. According to Beis Hillel, if it's missing 1 vertebrae of the spinal column, then it's a treifa. So why is that not listed in Tan de Rabbi Shmuel? So that's the question. So you know what the answer is? This is where you got. If you had a chart, this would help. The answer is, of the Mishnah, there are 18. Some of them are very similar. Bunch them together. Meaning, you have 18. Rabbi Shmuel says there's 18 total. The problem is, we have 18 of our Mishnah, but now we have an additional one. Right? Because we're going to go through each one. There's additional ones. The answer is, in the Mishnah, take 2, make them together, and put this one into the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Hamasas ubeis hakoisis. The puncturing of the mesis and the beis hakoisis, which are just 2 stomachs of the cow, make them together. That's 1. Okay, they're basically the same. Just different stomachs, but it's the same. Instead of counting them as 2, count that as 1. You now have an extra one. Put the missing the vertebrae in there. Okay. Good. So that's how he addresses the second one. He takes it, but he makes it work math-wise. Ripped out, yeah. Surgery was removed. People do this, by the way. You remove a vertebrae. It's possible for humans to do it. Anyway, number 3. Ha'ika glida. Glida means if all the skin of the animal is removed. For a disease, it sheds its skin. So isn't that a treifa? So why is that not listed? The answer is Savala Karav Meir Demachsher. He holds that that's not a treifa. He holds the animal could survive like that. Okay. What about the last one of the Basgar, which is the Reish, Ha'ika Charusa, shriveled. Apparently, this is talking about the lung being shriveled, where the lung becomes hard. So that should also be a treifa. So why is that not listed in Rabbi Shmuel? So the answer is Mara man katani la Rav Yosi bar Yehuda apiko Mara va'ayil charusa. The answer is go to the Mishnah. One of the treifas in the Mishnah is a punctured gallbladder. Rabbi Shmuel doesn't hold that that's a treifa. Take that out because he holds that that's not a treifa. So now I'm down to 17 and take the shriveled lung and put it in. So basically what we did was we took 2 from the Mishnah. There were 4. Baskar is 4. 2 of them Rabbi Shmuel doesn't hold of. 2 of them he agrees. He took out 2 from the Mishnah and put those 2 in. Good. Says the Gemara, okay, what about the Shev Shmaitza? The 7 Treifa teachings. Now what we're going to do is we're going to run through them very quickly. And we're going to have an extra 7. Again, Rabbi Shmuel has 18. We're now so far so good because we had to take out 2 from the Mishnah, put another 2. We're back at 18. The problem is an additional 7. What are the additional 7? The 7 teachings. 7 Amiraic teachings. What are the 7? Number 1. Amr of Masna, Haibuka de Itma de Shaf Meduchte. Treifa. If the thigh bone ball becomes dislocated. A dislocated thigh ball, that's a treifa. That's number 1. Number 2. Amr Rachish bar Papa Shrei Rav. Loksa bekul yachas treifa. If the animal becomes diseased in one kidney. Meaning, if it had kidney failure. Treifa. Number 3. Tanan nitel atchul kshera v'amar Rav Avira mishmei de Rava lo yishanu lenitel avol nikav treifa. Rav Avira has an interesting teaching. If it's missing the spleen, it's kosher. But if it's a punctured spleen, no good. What's a spleen? The spleen has the bile in it. The spleen is to clean out the body, right? So, The what? It holds the bile. So if there's a punctured spleen, the bile now goes into the body, which causes it to be septic. So that's the third teaching, a punctured spleen. Number 4, Amar Chana bar Chana Shmuel, Simonim shenidaldelu berubon treifa, dislocated trachea or esophagus. Number 4. Number 5, V'amar Rabbi Shila Amar Rav Masna Amar Shmuel, Nekra tsela meikara, treifa, if the rib becomes dislocated, treifa. Number 6, Gulgali shenechbasa barucha, if the skull is crushed, that's also treifa. And number 7, Ubasar hachayfes roiv hakeres berubai, or if the flesh that covers most of the keres, one of the stomachs, if that becomes punctured, that's also treifa. So the question is, we'll end with this. Today's daf is fairly quick. The question is, these 7, what does Rabbi Shmuel do with that? So you know what the answer is, the Gemara gives? There's a 7. You got to add 7. The problem is he's already at 18. He gives 18 as the max. The problem is you have these 7. So you know what the Gemara says? Here's what you do. You go through the Mishnah. There are a lot of punctures. Punctured lung, punctured heart, punctured, punctured cava. Take all the punctures. Don't count them separate. Make them one. Just make them one punctured. Punctured internal organs. Now I have an additional 6 available. Says the Gemara, Nekuvi Tamna have. How many punctures are listed in the Mishnah? There's 8. Chashvinu b'chad. There's actually 8. I'm sorry. So you take all the 8, make them one, which frees you up 7. Beautiful. Which allows you to have the 7 teachings. Apik shev ayil shev. Says the Gemara, wait a minute. Here's the problem. Ihachi psukin. Okay, 2 issues, by the way, and we'll end with this. So now what you did was you took the 8 punctures in the Mishnah, you made them one, to allow you to have the 7 more to bring into the Mishnah from the Sev Shmaitza. Problem is twofold. First of all, you're telling me that when it's all the same thing, you just make it one. You know that there's 2 lacerations in the Mishnah, right? There's 2 cases of lacerations. One is laceration of the trachea and laceration of the spinal cord. So why don't you make that one also, right? If you're making all of them one, don't just make punctures one, make lacerations one. And number 2, you made the punctures all one so you could add the 7 teachings. You know what one of the 7 teachings is? A punctured spleen. So now you made them all one so you can add the 7 teachings. But one of those 7 teachings is a punctured spleen. It shouldn't be counted. It should fall under that punctured category. So the math is not mathing. So really it's 6. Says the Gemara, and actually it's 5. I'll tell you why, because they want to, in the Mishnah, if you're counting all the punctures as one, you should count the lacerations as one, and there's 2 cases of lacerations in the Mishnah. There's lacerated trachea, lacerated spinal cord. So now, we made an extra 7 available. The problem is now we're down to 6. We have 1 extra, and now with the case of the punctured spleen, you have 2 extra. In other words, we have 2 extra. After all the math, we have 2 extra now. Says the Gemara, Ihachi psukinami trehave chashbinu v'chad batzlu chad v'oid deravavim rishid nami nekeva have. So the Gemara says, Elahan achtarti da'afkis loy tipik. The answer is, if you remember when we went through the Mishnah, in order the basgar, right? We had 4 of the basgar. 2 he didn't hold of, 2 he held of, and he had to take 2 out of the Mishnah to make room for those. The answer is, don't take those out. Leave those in. Just add the 2 of basgar and the 5 of the 7 teachings, because it's really 5, because with the lacerations and the punctures down, and the math works out. I will stop here.
When you first look at